Ken Boggle is a tarot reader and paranormal investigator, and one of the stars in Hulu and Disney Plus's new original series, Living for the Dead, which premieres today when this episode airs. Ken has been reading tarot for more than 30 years, and he's also investigated at locations like Waverly Hills, the Rhodes Hotel, and the Carnegie Center. Ken is a co-host of Scarefest Radio and hosts his own series, Tarot Date with Ken Boggle, which focuses on the psychic interpretation of tarot cards. We're chatting with Ken today on Third Eyesight. My name is Juan Francisco, and I'm a psychic medium and tarot card reader. I've always been curious about the supernatural, the paranormal, and psychic abilities, and I'm here to share my stories and interview folks who want to share their own stories with us. Let's get to it. Ken, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Oh, it's totally my pleasure. 100% my honor. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so excited to chat with you. So something I always ask folks first to start off is where you're based and about your work.
So I'm based in Central Kentucky. I live in the horse capital of the world. We fast horses in bourbon. It's Lexington. And I travel all around, though. I'm all over the country, but I mostly focus in Central Kentucky. And I do tarot card readings and tarot card classes and psychic development classes. And occasionally I film a great big TV show.
Yep, no big deal. No big deal at all. Well, tell me what was your introduction to tarot, or even just in general, how did you discover your psychic ability?
So I grew up in a very haunted house. It was a split level home. And probably 30 yards from the house was a cemetery. And because the house was split level, my bedroom was on the same level as the graves. And it had water running through it. It's like quintessential, and power lines crossing, like everything you would need as a recipe for a haunting. And I was about 7, 8 years old at the time, 31 years ago. My goodness, getting old. I'm not. I'm getting older. I'm always perpetually
That's right.
28.
Older, not old.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
right.
perpetually 28, so I don't know what I was thinking. Anyway, I would lay there in bed, and I would have nearly every night I could hear the footsteps of the spirits, and I would look to my right, which is where the door frame was. I'd look in the doorway, and there would be a man, and he would turn around the corner, and he would look at me, and he would see that I'm seeing him, and he would come into the room. Then 3 women would follow him, and they would circle my bed, and they would hover over my face. And that to an 8-year-old kid was just too much. So I wasn't sleeping. And one day I went to my grandmother's house, and Granny said, "Honey, you look terrible." And which was Granny's way of saying, like, "I'm worried about you. I love you. What's wrong? Honey, you look terrible. And what's wrong, baby?" And I said, I started crying, and I told her what was happening. She said, "Don't tell anybody else in the family. They won't understand. I understand, but we can't make a big deal out of this because your father would kill us both. But your granny's the same way, and I want to help you." And so she took me by the hand, and she taught me everything I know about being psychic. She developed me as a psychic. We've read nature. We read tea leaves, coffee grounds. Granny could read the falling of a leaf from a tree. And to her, it was no big deal. And she'd made tinctures. If somebody got bit by a snake, she was in the kitchen or going through the field pulling something. She was just iconic and my best friend. And that's how I got started. I then proceeded to read um, poker cards as a fortune telling thing. And Granny said, "That's real cute, but big boys use tarot cards. Let's go get you some tarot cards." So she gave me the money, and I ran into this little shop and got the cards. And she kind of helped me learn how to use them, which is the same process I use to help people learn tarot, which is Granny's way. And from there, I just kept it very quiet, very hush hush. Being this in southeastern Kentucky was weird enough. I didn't need people to know that in my free time I read cards and palms and things like that. So I grew up, became an adult, moved out of Prestonsburg, which is where I'm from, as soon as I could, as fast as I could, and ended up in Lexington, where I started doing paranormal investigating about 15 years ago, became a certified paranormal investigator, was doing that professionally, and started professionally reading tarot cards 10 years ago. And since then, my life has just radically changed.
Your grandmother sound like a total badass. What a like
Oh,
get
no.
this guy a movie. What an amazing, beautiful story. I mean, I
Yeah.
know I don't want to like discount the tough parts of your story, but just this your grandmother, what an amazing person to have by your side, you know?
Oh, dude, she used to smoke Doral cigarettes and read dirty romance novels. So, like, while I was buying tarot cards, Granny was getting Fabio covered, like Scarlet Letter type sex novels.
Now I like her even more.
Oh, she was great. They called her the mouth of the South because she would just talk about everybody and everything, and she was completely foul and still very cool, very hardworking, wonderful woman. But when my family found out that I was gay, they disowned me at 15, and I became homeless. And at 15 years old, and had to go get a job and go to school and these things. And the biggest disconnect, the hardest disconnect for me was losing Granny. I couldn't I couldn't conceive of that. And the dynamic being what it was, to not be there to hold her hand when she passed, breaks my heart every day. But being a psychic and being a medium and gifted in that way, she's with me all the time. She's with me now. She's with me 24/7. So I'm grateful for that.
And I don't have to tell you, like she's obviously so damn proud of you, and especially after everything you've been through.
Yeah, I was writing my book, which is with the editors now, Becoming Ken Boggle, and of course, there's a chapter in it about Granny, and I was it was so hard for me to get through it because I was reliving these moments and reliving my best friends, my relationship with her, and then occasionally I would feel her arms wrap around me, and she'd rub my back and say, "It's okay, baby, it's okay," and I would just cry. Don't get emotional. Not me being emotional.
Safe space here.
Yeah, so I would just cry, and then the editor sent the book back and was like, "Make these revisions," and I opened the book and I was like, "I'm spent. There's no way I can." So the book lays with her now, and hopefully that story will get told. You know, it's interesting to go from the holler to Hulu. You know, it's interesting to go from being dirt poor, wishing you could rent a Disney movie, to being employed by Disney. It's a lot to reconcile, and it's mind blowing. My mind is blown on a regular daily basis.
And I said this before we hit record, you have we can thank the universe absolutely, but it took you to give yourself that gift of this experience you're having right now. So you got to give yourself that credit. And I would love to hear if you're comfortable sharing like what was like how did Living for the Dead happen? Like how did this come across your desk?
Well, it came across my phone 1,000 times before I did anything about it. I think I was on Twitter. I know I was on Twitter, minding my own business, and I kept getting these DMs from people in the paranormal industry that I've known for years, saying, "You've got to do this. Like this. If they don't have you, like you've got to do this." And I'd already had a show called Tarot Day with Ken Boggle that I'd had for 3 seasons with Vinny Space and Cosm through Elizabeth Saint and Nick Groff, and from Ghost of Shepherdstown, these amazing icons in the paranormal scene. And I said, I've already done TV. I'm not really very interested in it. And it was probably a week or two before the cutoff to submit. And Elizabeth Saint, I love her so much. She wrote me and she's like, "Well, I just filled out a form for me. And they asked me who I thought should be in it. I talked you up. So you kind of owe me. You gotta go do this." So I did. And I think it was like 2 weeks later, they wrote me and said, "We would love for you to submit videos and some pictures, and we'd like for you to start meeting people." And as that process grew, and I got to meet more of the casting people, and I got to meet more of the production people, it became clear to me that this is not something I wanted to do, something I had to do. It was something I wanted to do this more than I ever wanted to be married. I wanted to do this more than I've ever wanted to have kids. This project for me is my life's work embodied in a series of in a series, and it's just brilliant. And I'm so thankful that Elizabeth Saint said, "Get your head out of your bottom and get to work." And I'm glad she did that because this has been an amazing adventure for me, an incredible journey.
That little push you needed, I guess by friendly coercion, you got the
Yeah.
gig.
It's so funny. I always call Elizabeth my Alice, and because I'm so Mad Hatter. I mean, obviously. And so I said to her, I was like, okay, Alice, I guess we'll go to the other side of the glass now and see what this is about. And we kind of uh, had this amazing moment where we were both waiting to hear back, and then I got to hear back, and it was positive news, and she's supported me the entire time. I'm so honored and blessed by her presence in my life.
That's amazing. Now, your, as you said, your expertise in paranormal investigations doesn't start with the show. You've been a certified paranormal investigator for quite a while. So I want to first ask you, what's been your favorite location you've ever investigated? That might be a hard
Oh,
choice.
my favorite investigation. Oh, okay. Give me just a second to think about that.
Sure.
I think like in my personal investigating, my favorite place to have read was a former schoolhouse and halfway home for children that was in downtown Lexington that a friend of mine bought to convert into apartments. And the things that I got to see as a medium and psychic going through that building was incredible. I mean, extraordinary. And so that was one of my favorite places to have ever investigated, like in my personal life. But in the show, every location we went to was iconic. The Clown Motel in Tonopah, the House of Wills in Missouri, the Limp Mansion, and I mean, like the Limp Mansion, like you know what I mean, like, or I guess that one's in St. Louis. The Limp Mansion's in St. Louis. It's just iconic, and I think my favorite was probably um, the House of Wheels. I think that's in Cleveland. I misspoke. I think it's in Cleveland. But that was my favorite place, not because of in the moment investigating, but how I saw the investigation go on the show. Because I got to see a couple of episodes prior to this, and that is an iconic, beautiful, moving, and intensely powerful episode.
Now, you've gone to visit amazing places through the show, but do you still have a location that is still on your bucket list that you haven't been to yet?
Yes, I want to get in the house or the hospital where the real exorcism happened for the young man who was possessed.
In
I
DC,
would,
right?
yeah, I think he had visited an aunt in St. Louis, and then they were living in DC, something like that. I would love to either go into the house or to go into the hospital has I think since been condemned, but I would love to go do that. I suggested it, and the producers were like, "Well, we can't really get that right now. What if we did Waverly Hills in Kentucky?" And I was like, I've done Waverly Hills, and everybody and their stepmom's done Waverly Hills, and Elaine White, who is an incredible, amazing showrunner and producer. She does Jack Osborne. She did Kesha. She's phenomenal. And she said, "Well, can I guarantee you this will be different because we're going to approach it in a different way?" And I said, "Okay, cool." And we did. And something happens at Waverly Hills toward the end of the episode. You'll see it that has never happened in a paranormal television show ever. So it is. That's a little bit of a teaser. I hope that excites you a little bit, but it's going to be cool.
Absolutely.
Very cool. Yeah, I loved it. Very good.
Now, when you have run a paranormal investigation, been a part of the ones you've done in your past, what are the guidelines or the parameters or the safeguards you prefer to put in place? I know everyone's can look very different and people have different approaches to investigation. So I'd love to hear what yours are.
I think the first approach is having a good baseline sweep. I think it's just in terms of protocol and processes. I think that's the smartest thing to do. It's only then can you gauge what is abnormal, because if you're new to the building or you're new to the location, if you just go in with your REM pods and your K2s and all these things, you're not really going to get a good idea about what's abnormal. Could be faulty wiring, could be this sort of electrical interference or something. So I think it starts with a really good baseline sweep, and then I think spiritually you go in with great protection. You have to really go in protected, and to make great details, great notes. What was the traffic like outside? What was the moon phase? What was the weather like? What is the family or the people who were in this location? What is their backstory? I think it's imperative that you do that when you go in to do a proper paranormal investigation, because it gives you tons of details that just set up a framework for what you can expect, and what is out of the realm of normality for this location or these people.
Yeah, it's so easy. I've been on paranormal investigations here in New York City. Have you done any of the places here in New York City, like Morse Jamel Mansion, Merchant's
I
House?
I have never been to New York City,
We
but
got to get you here.
well, I'm going to tell you, I will be there the 17th and the 18th. I leave on the 19th. I can't tell you why I'm there because it is a massive, huge thing that's about to happen. But I'll be
Awesome.
there. I'll be in NYC then. So I've never been there. I would love for someone to show me around. I'd love for somebody to kind of mop me up, get my feet up under me, because I'm sure my knees are going to give out from just absolute. I can't wait. I've never been to NYC. What's your favorite place to do there? What is your
You mean like paranormal wise or just in
Yeah,
general?
yeah, yeah,
Well, I've only done two paranormal investigations, and to be honest, they were like public, like the public, anyone from the public could come in and do it. It was capped to a certain number of people. Um, the first time I ever did an investigation in New York City proper was the Morris Jamal Mansion, which is in northern Manhattan part of the borough, and it is a I'm gonna get this wrong, but it's I think it was built in the 1700s. One family owned it, and then during the Revolutionary War, George Washington used it as like his station for 5 weeks during the war, because it was the highest point in Manhattan at the time, where they could see at the like where Wall Street is now, like see the British coming
yeah,
in. And then after that, another family owned it, and there's rumors that the wife of the mother of that family murdered her husband. Aaron Burr was her second husband, Aaron Burr, who killed Alexander Hamilton. So he lived there. His room is there. So people pick up on Aaron Burr. They pick up on Eliza Jumel. I got a lot of things confused there, but that's the gist, like of who of the characters that were there. It's a great place. People like to depict it as scary and the spirits are evil. They're really not, in my opinion. They're very friendly and they do show up in different ways. Then the Merchant's House, though, is considered one of the most haunted in the state, and that is in not Lower Manhattan, but the bottom half of Manhattan. So yeah, I'll definitely send these to you right
do
before
that.
you. Yeah.
Text me that, because there will be a season two. So I mean, that's my theory as a psychic, that this is going to be what happens. So they'll ask me again where I want to go, and I would love to have an educated list of places to visit. You know,
And Long Island has a lot of spots, abandoned hotel, hospitals, a lot of that stuff. A lot of people film out in Long Island too. So I'll send you a
oh, I
list.
love that. Yeah,
Yeah.
please do that. I'd love that.
Yeah. Now, what's one myth about paranormal investigations? Like, what do you think people often think about these investigations that you want to debunk right now?
That they're exciting. If you
Agreed.
do an actual paranormal investigation, it's lengthy moments of boredom, punctuated with moments of panic, fear, and emotion. And uh, one who's new to this might go to one of these public investigations where you go from room to room and you're done with the whole place in 6 hours. I mean, I've spent 6 hours in a crawl space. I've spent 7 or 8 hours in an attic with no air conditioning. Like, that's what real paranormal investigating is. It takes days, days. I think even the Warren said it takes 28 days. And that wonderful series on Netflix, 28 Days Haunted, with my friend Shane Pittman and Nick Simmons, and Aaron Thompson. So I mean, like, I look at it and I think people at home probably who aren't doing this as a regular everyday thing, they don't realize just exactly how long you go between actual paranormal responses, and exactly what those responses are like. Spirit can be very subtle, or it can be outrageous. You really just have to be very patient and very open and very present so that you don't miss a single thing.
When I've been on investigations, I've been to Morris Jamel 2 or 3 times. The first time, some pretty spectacular things happened during the investigation. The second time, almost nothing happened, and people there were really disappointed. They don't understand that it's not like doesn't happen every single time. You don't win the jackpot every time you're at a location, right?
And even if you live in a paranormal environment or in a home, let's say, that's experiencing paranormal activity, it's not like you see on television. It's not like every 5 minutes the ceiling is raining or dishes fly out. I just, one of my exes, of which there are many, bless them, they all tried their best.
Brag about it. Brag about it.
I mean, there are many, 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 many. But anyway, he had at his house, it was every time he and I would get ready to go to bed, drawers would open on their own. And me being a paranormal investigator, I would say, okay, well, we're not going to bed. We have to open up all these drawers. We have to look at all the wheels. We have to make sure it's not a weight thing. And we have to test it out. He was so over me. I think like within the third month, that kid was over me. But it's just that it just proves the point. Like, it's not like you see on TV, movies and things like this. You know, it's not like you turn around and you're getting jumped in the shower every time you're in it. It just happens. There's a trigger, there's a reason, or there's a like in residual hauntings where there's a repeated pattern of behavior. So yeah, it's very interesting, and I encourage people, if you are really interested in doing a paranormal investigation, to go in these public events and get a taste for it, but be patient and understand that that's not exactly the way it is when you're doing it with real authentic paranormal investigation.
Yeah, and the magic of TV edits out all those really fun, boring parts, which that's because that's how it happens on TV.
You know, for us, there were moments that were so shocking that we did film that got cut. Like we were at the Copper Queen and in Bisbee, Arizona, which is truly haunted. I highly suggest everybody go. We were doing a spirit board session and heard this massive bang as the board was spelling out the name. We thought it was coming from a piano, so we flipped the piano around. We're looking inside the piano. There's no reason for it. And I thought, it happened on the other side of this wall. So I run around to the other side of the wall. All this is being filmed. And I just hauled off and punched this wall as hard as I could to recreate the bang. I didn't know the wall was rock and stone and concrete. So I immediately start just expletives, like just cussing and screaming. And Elaine White's like, "You're the one shuffling cards, Ken. Can you not break your hand?" So that got cut, but it was phenomenal. We were in some locations where the cameras weren't on, and Juju got scratched, or Roz got touched, or things like this. So the show really is very restrained. The Living for the Dead is very restrained in what they are showing you, because there were some very horrific moments that were so intense they didn't make it. Conversely, there were moments where we were all sitting there looking at each other like, what the hell do we do now? Like, what's happening now? like, why is nothing happening? And then boom, we hit a nerve and the REM pods start going off and the millimeters start engaging. Very interesting experience that.
Yeah, it's always on spirits time, as I like to think, not always on our time. Now, I'm going to slightly switch the question about paranormal investigations. What is one myth about psychic abilities that you want to debunk right now?
That we're never wrong, or that we can give you the winning lottery numbers, or that we never make mistakes. The thing about psychic abilities is that it is, and I know I'm going to upset a lot of people. Please don't tweet me and be mad at me. But the thing about psychic abilities and talents is that it's not a gift. It's not a gift. It is in a lot of ways a curse, but everybody has it. It is, I believe, eventually going to be proved by science as an evolutionary trait. If you think of the days, when we were Homo erectus and we were in the bush and we were gathering berries and we were, wee little monkeys. We didn't see or hear the danger, but we felt that we had to run or had to hide or climb a tree. So I think it's just an instinctive, inherent trait in everyone's life. We all have some touch of psychic talent because we had to stay alive back then. We had to be aware. And even science will tell you that the human brain can conceive of someone looking at them, whether they are awake or asleep. So whether you're completely sensory deprivation, or you're asleep, or you're not paying attention, there's a sixth sense that happens. So I hope that science proves that. If I had enough money and the time, if I had the time, Lord knows I would try to prove that. But the other thing is that we're never wrong, or that we're infallible. And the truth is, we're very the opposite, because we're still human beings, especially in our own lives. Because I think someone once said to me, "God, why do you have so many exes? Like, you would think a psychic would know." And my response is always the same. One, it's hard to date a psychic because we do know when you're lying. That's hard. That's very hard. That's why me and that other guy broke up. Actually, this is why me and like 80% broke up, because I'm like, wait a minute, spirit God's talking. What? I'm like, you're a liar. You know what I mean? Like, that's
Spirit
hard.
told me, no.
Yeah, yeah. Or I had a vision in the shower that you were hooking up while I was filming. You know what I mean? Like, these things happen. But you have to have the human experience. No matter how psychic you are or how gifted you are, you have to have the human experience. Otherwise, what would the point be, right? So I try to talk to people about it in that context of, we are allowed to make mistakes, and we certainly have a harder time reading for ourselves than we do others, because the reality is we have to go through these human experiences.
Couldn't agree more. And I think the first point you made about, I also believe it's an ability we all have through conditioning, religion. There's so many factors that can make us believe we don't have the ability. And then, yeah, we're here to be in our human, like, if we were not meant to live our human lives, we would stay in the spirit world pre-birth, right? So, yeah, we're meant to be. I mean, something that comes up a lot with spirit when I channel, if they were a person who had a potty mouth, they'll come through with a potty mouth, because me too. I mean, I'm sure when I come back and my, I don't know, grandniece channels me in a seance, I'm gonna be saying, this and that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I was actually going to I'm having a premiere party here in Lexington, and for to benefit Lex Arts, which is an arts council we have here to help artists in our community. And I never really hung out with these people before, not really. And so I show up, not looking like this. I was kind of like really incognito, and like I get there and they're talking to me about the location and things like this, and I'm just responding the way I do, like it's F this and F that. Like, I have a really foul mouth. And the head of the organization looked at me and said, "How many times do they have to bleep you in the show?" And I was like, "Oops, maybe I've said too much." You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm sure that when I come back to haunt, which I will, and I'll do so through Stevie Nicks music and foul language, and I will rattle the pots and pans. I'm going to be as dramatic as I possibly can when I haunt people, because they would expect nothing less. That's exactly what you'd think if you're my friend. Ken Boggle, he's going to haunt you. Like, that is what it is. So yeah, I'm sure I'll come back foul mouth, crazy as hell.
I think if anything, for a long time, people have seen psychics as, I mean, I grew up seeing them as unapproachable. Like, they have a gift, and I feel like, number one, acknowledging that it's ability we all have, and number two, that we're human, we're gonna act human and normal. It makes it that much more of an approachable craft, right? And I think, makes us more approachable. We're not just yogis sitting on a mountain.
Absolutely. And I think with people like Lorraine Warren, she kind of presented as this very together, hands clasped queen mother vibe, high sanctimonious, which I loved her, thought she was great. She's an influence of mine. But it was very unapproachable. I think that if you were the kind of person who wants to see psychics being real, living for the dead is your thing. Because in this show, you're going to see us be human. You're going to learn as much about us as you are paranormal investigating, as well as the locations. It's all perfectly balanced. But each episode, there's something that happens to one of us that's completely unscripted, where we have a personal journey and you find out a little bit more. Unlucky for me, it was episode one, where I just completely fell apart. And had this huge emotional trauma trigger. And Roz, who's one of the castmates, took me into a bathroom and held me while I cried. So this is in the series. And so you're going to see that we are as normal as everybody else. We struggle the same as many other people do, sometimes even worse. And that we're all flying by the seat of our pants down the freeway of life, wondering what the hell's going to happen next. You know what I mean? Like, but we have this talent for being able to read others and environments and this kind of a thing. So it's going to be, you'll love it if you're interested in that one. You're just going to love it.
No, believe me, I am so excited for this show. And you just mentioned the first episode, and I was going to ask you. Well, by the time people are listening to this podcast episode, the first episode, "Living for the Dead," will have launched on Hulu. So I wanted to
Oh,
ask
cool.
you, yeah, without giving too much away, and you just mentioned a part of the episode that was really vulnerable and open on your part. What are you most excited for people to see in this first episode?
I I am most excited for people to see me survive an environment of 2,000 clowns because I am petrified of clowns. This terrifies me. They terrify me. I watched Stephen King's It way too early in my childhood development. Like it really messed me up. But in the first episode, the team, my friends, decided the place we're going to go is a haunted clown motel. And that the thing we should do is blindfold me, put me in sensory deprivation in this lobby in the dark, full of hundreds and hundreds of clowns, and say, "Okay, Ken, go speak to the dead." It was a nightmare, but I survived it, and I'm most excited about people seeing that because I want people to see that if you're going to be a paranormal investigator, you have to run toward the fear, and you have to run toward it as opposed to running away from it. And I think that's why it's great to have a great cast of LGBT plus people because we've ran enough and we're going to stand our ground and we're going to figure things out and we're going to communicate with spirits as opposed to provoke them and that we're going to face our own fears. So I think it plays beautifully in that first episode. And I'm excited for people to see that.
What you're sharing reminds me of something I hear. There's this YouTube channel. I love watching paranormal videos on YouTube, and there's this one channel I like a lot called Nuke's Top Five, and he always says, there's another channel I forget. One of them says sometimes living people are scarier than the deceased, and I
Oh,
think doesn't mean the deceased can't be scary sometimes, or things we don't understand on the other side can't be scary, but I think there's a lot to what you said about having a queer cast who has been through so much individually. And it's just such an interesting journey for all of you to have, to like being out and open, going through what you've gone through, and then interacting with it. It's just, you don't hear a lot about queer spirituality and queer interaction with the paranormal. Would you say?
you really, yeah, you don't. And that's weird because gays are what makes spooky season great. You know what I mean? Gays are
I
what
won't
make Halloween.
disagree.
Gays make Halloween fabulous. I mean, we're carving pumpkins and we're popping corn and we're getting decked out. Saturday night before Halloween, we're all getting sloshed down at the bar. I mean, I know that's what we do in my household. We're always looking for the next X, I guess. But it's a thing that's like iconically gay. It gives us a chance to sort of step outside of the judgment we felt of others and be as openly freaky as we would like to be without any judgment, to have fun, to be loud, and it be a place where we can meet heterosexual people and to meet everybody on that place where you're a kid again and you're young and having fun. I love that. I love it.
And the spirit world, in my experience, has no judgment and just is. And I think that's a lesson
Yeah,
for, not to be cheesy, lesson for all of us. So
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, and also the spirit isn't trying to impress people. They've already done that, and they've figured out that the realities of life, and they know all the answers now because that's what happens when you reach the other side. So it's a very beautiful and genuine exchange that occurs with spirit, and I think that's yet another thing this show captures really really well that I don't think has ever been captured so beautifully before in paranormal television. I think that a lot of the human aspects and the compassion for spirit has been lost. I think a lot of very muscle bound douchebaggery can occur from certain teams. Is that terrible? Should I not have said that?
No,
Is
that's
that
fine. It's allowed here.
okay? I just know that you have some groups like my friends Dustin Perry, Grant Wilson, Jason Hall, Steve Tango. My friends like who do a great respective professional job, and then you have people like others that don't, and they're pretty antagonistic and provocative. I think still both teams missed one part, which is what can we do to leave the situation better than we found it? How much compassion can we bring to the living and the dead? How can we heal both of these and leave the situation in better shape than where we found it? I think that's something that this show does beautifully.
That's amazing because it tires the hell out of me, annoys me to see these shows. And I grew up enjoy. Oh, my doggy's joining us. These, she's my co-host. These shows on like some channels that and networks that it's like it's always these muscle dudes saying like, yeah, come on, Jamaica knock, yeah, and they start cursing. And it's like if I'm dead and you're in my home cursing me out, telling me to do 2 knocks, you don't think I'm gonna scare the shit out of you? Like, what do you
Right.
expect? It's always it's always muscle dudes.
Yeah, well, I think we're talking about the same individual, so we won't fine tune
No
the
names, no names, no
yeah.
networks.
But he and I haven't got along with each other for years, so that's cool with me. But I look at it and I think it's about time that we added a new flavor. You know, it and like the Tennessee Wraith Chasers, they're some of my greatest friends. Um, people like Chip Coffee, they're great and wonderful, but we need a new approach. We need to break the mold and try to extend towards something a little bit different. And that's what Living for the Dead has done. And I hope people like Adam Berry and Chip Coffee love it because they're kind of are the queer pioneers in American paranormal television. They really are. So I hope that my friends like love it and watch it, and I hope it makes them proud. But I hope they see that what we've done is add something, that we're not trying to completely reinvent, that we're trying to just participate in the conversation of life after death.
Well, I'm so excited to watch it. And now, before we end the episode, where can listeners find out more about you and what you do?
Well, I highly suggest finding all 5 castmates because we all do something completely different. So please find Roz Hernandez at Ghosted by Roz. It's a podcast wherever you get your podcast at. She's phenomenal. Find Alex LeMay, great TikTok star. Alex is a great TikTok star. She's phenomenal. Find Logan Taylor, who is at Intuitive Logan on Instagram. And it's Jujube, at it's Jujube, because Jujube is a spiritual witch and healer that is profoundly interesting and beautiful and warm and strong. Find them as well. But you can find me anywhere. It's just at Ken Boggle. There's no punctuation. There's no spaces. Just at Ken Boggle, Boggle. And find me at kenboggle.com. If you're interested in doing readings or you want to do psychic development courses, that's the place to find me.
And you mentioned a book you're working on. When should we expect that?
I think Mary Jo, who's my editor, I think she's finishing it in the next few months. The goal is to have it be finished by winter and to be sold by spring and out by summer.
Okay, we'll be on the lookout. Well,
Yeah.
Ken, thank you so much for your time. It was
No,
awesome to talk to you.
thank you so much for giving your time. Like I was a podcaster for many years, for 4 years, I think. And it's not as easy as people think it is. And it takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of time editing and putting together and getting guests to come on. So really from the bottom of my heart, thank you for letting me even do your program, because I know how not easy it is. So thank you.
Well, the honor is all mine. Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
If you have a question or topic you want me to cover on Third Eyesight, head to my website, juanfranciscospirit.com/contact, and send a message my way. If you really enjoyed this episode, leave a review wherever you listen. I'd really appreciate it.